preparing with computers are going to have a hard time dealing with, in a practical game, the pressure that black can put. So let's look. D takes c5, and this is similar to the idea in the game with Beliavsky. And normally, I think, back in the day, the idea of this variation, this regrouping, rook f7, was to play bishop f8 here. But there is going to be problems now if bishop f8 was simply b6, and white is going to be able to open those lines. So hence, d takes c5. Bishop takes c5. Now h5. And like I said, I think it's somewhere around here, Gelfand had looked with the computer and decided that it was very favorable for white. And on a certain level, it looks that way. We're going to have two ways to open the position, one with b6 and one with d6. Our bishop is very beautiful, both attacking on the queen side, and as we'll see in the game, it has the opportunity to come back to defend the king. And of course, the knights c4 and c3, everything looks fine. And the fact that we got rid of that d6 pawn feels like it should be good for white. In particular, it feels like it should help us be able to open the position. Now, one problem here is d6, which I think was playable, but the reason Gelfand didn't do it was bishop f8, and there's some tactical problems now with defending the d6 pawn. So, a5 was played, g4. So after g4, Gelfand plays a move that at first sight will look a little bit strange, but it does make a lot of sense, and that is king h1. The idea is to be able to bring the bishop back to g1, where it will defend the dark squares, in particular the square h2. And now we see g3, b6, bishop f8. And this is the move I think that Gelfand didn't properly appreciate in his preparation. This position had, by the way, been reached several times before. It was only in one game that this had been played. It was the North American game, Canadian game, with Roussel-Roussemont as white against Charbonneau as black, and Charbonneau is a good friend of Nakamura's, and he will have seen this game. And we're going to see, I'm going to show you that game, and we're going to see in that game that there are many themes that are similar to what happened in this game. So in that game, bishop g1 was played. Knight h4 exclam. The problem with this move, bishop g1, that we're going to see again and again in this game, is that it creates for very unfortunate mating patterns involving the g2 square. So for example, if, say, knight e5, bishop h3 is just exceedingly strong. G2 mate. So all of a sudden, black is developing some very serious threats. That game continued. Rook e1, knight g2 exclam. King g2, rook g7. White's actually just lost now. Knight e5, g takes h, king h1, knight e4. White resigned. There's nothing to do against hg and queen h4. Very nice game. And we're going to see some of the themes, in fact, in a little bit more developed way in this game with Gelfand. So, to what extent Gelfand saw all that is a little bit unclear. But the way it went there was b6, bishop f8, d6. And you have to suspect that Gelfand wasn't too happy about this, especially when you think back, and on move 18, d6 could have been played as well. And there, the pawn isn't even on g3. So this is a much favorable version for white. A takes b. And now Gelfand probably should have played ab here. ab, he didn't like it, I'm sure, because the queen gets out. And also that rook on a8 was one of the few pieces that wasn't doing anything. Would rather not trade it off. cd, rook d1, rook d7, bishop a3, d5, with a bit of a mess. But at least here, since the center is opening, white's not going to get mated immediately. So, as it was, Gelfand had the idea of playing bishop g1, thinking that now we'll have the option of both a, b, and dc, depending on how things develop. Unfortunately, though, there's knight h4, which he presumably missed. And it's one of these things that it takes the computer a while to understand that white is in fact the one in trouble. Now, rook e1 needs to be played because bishop f1 has to be gotten ready to guard this square, because let's say, for example, d takes c, bishop h3 is just too powerful. So, rook e1, and now knight g2 exclam. And here Gelfand made a mistake, but it's already hard to figure out what to do for white. So king takes g2 would have been the only possible way out, but it's really almost impossible to do anything in a practical game, I think, against this kind of calculation. For example, rook g7, and now white's only way out would have been to have played something like this. D takes, pawn takes, and now give the piece back. Let's say pawn takes, rook takes, queen takes, and we have some kind of unclear game, or black still to be preferred. Another problem that's interesting here is that hg, which Nakamura actually gave in a note, in a very cursory analysis of the game, doesn't work too well at all because of queen d7. In those notes, Nakamura was looking at rook takes g3, but queen d7 is much stronger, threatening queen h3. So, as it was, instead of king takes g2, Gelfand played d takes c, and this allows a very beautiful combination. Knight takes c1, so here we're going to be threatening g2, mate. Queen takes e1, g2, exclam. King takes, rook g7, king h1. So here we're going to threaten mate again on g2. Bishop f1, and perhaps now Gelfand had thought that he was maybe out. It looks, at least superficially, that black doesn't have anything. But there's an unfortunate resource, and that's queen d3. And now it's simply over. We're threatening queen takes f3, and of course the bishop can't move away due to this very familiar by now theme of bishop g2. So what else to do? Knight takes e5, the only way to control f3. Bishop takes f1, again threatening bishop g2 mate. Queen takes f1, queen takes c3. Now it's white's turn to collect all the pieces. Rook c1, queen e5, c8, takes, queen e6, and white has to resign. So I thought it was a very beautiful game, tactically, and also a very nice exhibition of the power of the King's Indian, especially on a very high level. Okay, till next time. Bye-bye.